You are 24 years old and you smell like espresso in a way that no longer washes out. It's in your hoodies, it's in your car. Your dentist, at your last cleaning, asked if you'd recently had a coffee, and you had to explain that no, this is just what you are now, permanently, at a cellular level. You make $16.50 an hour steaming milk for people who say, "Can you make it a little less foamy?" in a tone that suggests foam has personally wronged them. Tips average out to about $9 an hour on a good shift. Less on Mondays, because apparently nobody tips on Mondays, a phenomenon you've never seen studied academically but which you could personally testify to in a court of law. Your coworker Jasmine, who has been doing this for 6 years and has genuinely transcendent latte art, once told you that customers tip better when you remember their names. You tested this theory. It's true. It is deeply, almost insultingly true. A man named Gary tips 40% more than a man whose name you don't know, and the only difference between them is that you once heard someone call the first man Gary. This is not, on its face, a story that sounds like it's headed toward financial triumph. I want to be upfront about that. If this were a movie trailer, the music right now would be quiet, a little sad, definitely not triumphant. Stick with it anyway. Here's the first thing that happens, and it happens almost by accident. The same accidental way most of the good financial decisions in this story are apparently going to arrive. A pattern you'll only notice much later, if at all. Your manager, a woman named Deb who has run this location for 11 years and has never once, in your observation, raised her voice above a conversational murmur, even during the Saturday morning rush that can only be described as a hostage situation involving oat milk, mentions offhandedly that the company offers a small 401k match once you hit 1,000 hours in a calendar year. You hit 1,000 hours by August. You did not do this on purpose. You did this because you needed the shifts, because rent exists, because your roommate, Priya's cat, requires a specific brand of prescription food that costs more than some of your own meals. You sign up for the 401k because Deb hands you the form during a slow Tuesday afternoon and says, not unkindly, "You should probably just do this," in the exact tone people use when they're right about something small but important and don't feel like arguing about it. You contribute 3% of $16.50 an hour. This is not a large number. If you did that math right now, out loud, it would sound almost like a joke. It is, in fact, sort of a joke. $14 a week, less than what you spend on the specific oat milk brand you personally prefer. Ironically, given your entire profession revolves around oat milk you don't personally prefer. Let's talk about the tips, because the tips are the actual engine of this story, and also because the tips are the part that makes this genuinely structurally different from a lot of finance advice, which tends to assume you have a salary in the traditional sense, as opposed to a jar. Literally, a jar sitting on a counter, filling with the loose financial gratitude of strangers who feel weird about card tipping prompts. You've started, at Jasmine's suggestion, dumping half your cash tips directly into a savings account instead of your checking account, using an app that rounds it up and moves it automatically, mostly because the app was free and Jasmine wouldn't stop talking about it during a closing shift until you downloaded it just to make her stop. This is not discipline. None of this is discipline. If there's one honest thread running through stories like this one, it's that they're never about discipline. This is about the fact that moving money out of your checking account is annoying enough app-wise. Multiple taps, a little slider, a confirmation screen, that once it's automated, undoing it requires more effort than just letting it happen. Your first year of tips moved this way, $1,140. Your first year of 401k contributions, including Deb's employer match, which the company actually does provide, somewhat shockingly, for a coffee chain. $890. Total accumulated wealth at 24, after 1 year of doing this, $2,030. I want to sit with that number for a second, because $2,030 is not a number that changes a life. $2,030 is a number that could, depending on your specific bad luck, be wiped out by one car repair. It is not impressive, nobody is throwing a parade, but it is, notably, more than zero, which is where you started, and also more than what several of your friends have, despite some of them making considerably more money than you, a detail we will absolutely be returning to. Your friend Marcus, for context, makes $58,000 a year as a marketing coordinator, wears button-down shirts to work, and has, as of right now, $340 in savings. Marcus is not bad at his job. Marcus is, in fact, quite good at his job. Marcus is bad at not buying things, specifically a rotating cast of expensive sneakers that he describes, with total sincerity, as an investment, a claim that has never once been supported by resale value, appreciation, or basic reality. You do not bring this up up with Marcus. You've learned, socially, that bringing up other people's sneakers as investments theory tends to end friendships faster than almost any other topic, including politics, which is saying something. Year 2. You're 25 now. You've picked up a second part-time job at a bookstore 2 days a week, not out of some grand financial strategy, but because the bookstore is quiet, smells nice, and the manager there, an extremely tired man named Phil, does not require you to remember anyone's name or engage in small talk about foam. Your combined income, coffee plus bookstore plus tips, lets you bump your 401k contribution to 5%. You also, somewhat accidentally, discover that your bank offers a slightly higher interest rate on savings if you open something called a high-yield account, a phrase that sounds like it belongs in a heist movie, but actually just means the number goes up marginally faster while you do absolutely nothing different. By the end of year 2, your total accumulated wealth, $6,200. This includes tips, 401k, employer match, and a genuinely embarrassing amount of interest that, when you calculated it, made you say, "Wait, that's it?" out loud, alone, in your apartment, in a tone that startled your roommate's cat, who was already startled by most things, being a cat who had apparently made poor life choices regarding fear responses. Here's where things get, if you'll allow the phrase, mildly interesting, in the specific way that compound interest is interesting to people who have accepted that interesting now just means a number went up slightly more than expected. By year 4, you're 28. You've left the coffee shop, not dramatically, just because a friend of a friend got you an interview at a small local nonprofit doing administrative work. Salaried, $42,000 a year, benefits included. You almost didn't take it because you genuinely miss Jasmine's latte art commentary and Deb's murmured competence, but $42,000 salaried beats $16.50 an hour plus tips, plus the specific ache in your feet that never fully goes away. Here's the thing nobody warns you about when you leave a tipped job for a salaried one. You don't stop the habits. The 401k contribution, now automatically 6% of a bigger number, keeps going. The savings app, still quietly rounding up your card purchases and moving spare change into an account you mostly forget exists, keeps going. You never made a dramatic decision to get serious about money. You just kept doing the boring things Deb and Jasmine accidentally taught you on a slightly larger paycheck, balance at $31,000. Your friend Marcus, now 28 as well, making $71,000 a year at a different marketing job, has $2,100 in savings, a car he's still paying off from a great deal that turned out to require 4 years of payments, and a strong, unwavering opinion that retirement savings don't matter if you're not enjoying your 20s. A sentence he has now said to you at 3 separate birthday parties, each time with the same conviction, none of which has changed his actual bank balance. Year 7. You're 31. The nonprofit job became a slightly better nonprofit job, $51,000 now, and somewhere in there you also inherited, and I use this word generously, $3,000 from a great-aunt you'd met exactly twice, both times at funerals of other relatives, which is a strange way to know someone but apparently sufficient for inheritance purposes. You put the $3,000 straight into the brokerage account that grew out of your original savings habit, the one that started as Jasmine's rounding up app and slowly, over years, without you really deciding to, became an actual investment account with actual index funds in it, because at some point you Googled, what do I do with money in a savings account that's just sitting there, at 1 a.m. and followed the first reasonable-sounding advice you found, which happened to be correct, mostly by luck. Balance at 31, $89,000. You did the math on this once, badly, on your phone, in a waiting room, and realized that your tip jar from age 24, that literal jar, the one with the crack in the ceramic that Deb kept meaning to replace, had somehow, 7 years later, indirectly become the seed of a number with 5 digits in it. The actual quote from your own internal monologue at the time was something close to, "This is extremely stupid and also kind of incredible." And honestly, both halves of that sentence still feel true. Year 14, you're 38. You now make $67,000 a year, a senior administrative role you didn't especially plan for, but that happened because you stayed somewhere long enough to become the person who knew where everything was. Marcus, meanwhile, makes $94,000 now, has switched jobs 4 times chasing raises, drives a car that a stranger would call nice, and has, as of a conversation at his sister's wedding where this somehow came up, $11,000 saved for retirement total. You do not say anything about this at the wedding. You've gotten very good, over 14 years, at not saying anything about this, a skill nobody teaches you explicitly, but that you develop the same way you develop a tolerance for oat milk foam complaints, through repeated, quiet exposure. Balance at 38, $310,000. Year 21, you are 45. This is the number the title promised you, so let's just say it plainly, the way Deb would say it, in her conversational murmur, like it's not a big deal, even though it is. $1,020,000. $1,020,000, generated from a starting point of a cracked ceramic tip jar, a 3% contribution that was $14 a week, an app Jasmine wouldn't stop mentioning until you downloaded it out of pure social pressure, and roughly 2 decades of not particularly noticing any of it happening. You are not notably a person who got into real estate or learned to trade options or did anything that would make an interesting 1-hour documentary. You made coffee, you worked at a bookstore, you did administrative work at a nonprofit that helps people with something completely unrelated to finance. Your entire financial personality for 21 years has been leave the automatic thing alone and occasionally get $3,000 from a great aunt. Marcus, at 45, making $128,000 a year now, a genuinely large salary, has $84,000 saved, a number he mentioned to you recently with something you could only describe as forced casualness in the tone of someone who has recently, privately, done math he didn't love the results of. Here's the actual joke buried in all of this, the one Deb would probably appreciate, assuming Deb has ever watched a YouTube video in her life, which you genuinely have no idea about. You made less money than almost everyone you know for the entire span of this story. Less than Marcus, every single year, sometimes by a laughable margin. And yet here you are, at 45, sitting on over $1 million, mostly because of decisions you didn't really make on purpose, following the accidental advice of a barista with great latte art and a manager who talked like she was perpetually trying not to wake a sleeping baby. You still, occasionally, smell faintly of espresso 21 years later in a way that makes no logical sense, but that your spouse insists is real and has stopped arguing about. You still think about the tip jar sometimes. The actual jar. It's long gone, obviously, replaced probably 4 times over by whatever the coffee chain became after 2 rebrands and 1 brief doomed pivot into also selling smoothies. But you think about it the way you'd think about someone who did you an enormous, undeserved favor once and then disappeared before you could properly thank them. The jar never knew what it was starting. Honestly, neither did you. You were just trying to make rent and stop your roommate's cat from staging a hunger strike over its prescription food. Everything after that was mostly just math, left alone long enough to do what math does. Deb's still there, by the way. Same location, same murmur, closer to 25 years now instead of 11. You send her a card every Christmas. She has never once mentioned the 401k thing again. You suspect she doesn't remember saying it. You remember it exactly.